Well, this is interesting. Greg in Chicago. Greg, you want to oppose the minimum wage because you own a small business?
I didn't say oppose. The question I have is that I find it appalling that a third party who has no clue what my margins are or how the business is structured, for profit or loss, to tell me what I should pay somebody, because if you do raise it, factually you've just increased the product itself and passing those costs on to the consumers, which
Right.
in then turn costs the employees more money. So
Okay. Well, let's then get government out of your business altogether. Let's say that anytime you want to enforce a contract, you're going to have to pay the thousands of dollars that it costs to run our court system. Anytime that you want to hire somebody who knows how to read and write, you're going to have to reimburse the government, $10,000, $20,000 for their public education. That anytime, let's do away with your limits of liability, so that if one of your employees does something bad or anything happens in your corporation that's bad, you can be personally prosecuted rather than it has to go through the corporation. And let's do away with the limitations of liability on investments, so that if anything goes wrong, I mean, right now under current corporate law, the most you can lose is whatever you've invested in your company. Let's make it so that you can lose absolutely everything. Let's do away with all the benefits that you get as a business owner, so that you as a business owner don't have to give a little bit of a benefit to one of your workers.
So you're going to go about changing all these laws and impose that how every time you make these strong...
No, I'm trying to make the point, Greg, that doing business in this country is a privilege, not a right. It's a privilege that comes with a certain price. And that price is that you conduct your business in a way that, at the very least, is not harmful to your community. And I would submit to you that if you are paying people a wage that is so low that I have to pay for their food stamps, and I have to pay for their housing, and I have to pay for their Medicare, then you're running a business along a business model that is basically parasitic.
So the mindset that the tariffs and stuff that our government chooses not to enforce, that you've got to compete with a third world country. I mean, we can go on for this forever, but the point that I made was,
I'm with you on that.
Economically, how that's going to happen, because this is ridiculous, and the whole point that a third party, again, because if you guys want to go after
third party is the government.
I'm all for the. You want to go after Costco, Walmart, all those guys. Costco isn't attacked because they're union and they pay higher wages. I understand that.
Right.
But if you want to go after McDonald's and all these guys, then write the law to go after them, because you are going to hurt a ton of people with collateral damage with that mindset and that type of theory of thinking when it comes to economics.
Greg, history does not demonstrate that. History demonstrates that every time the minimum wage goes up, that if you have a small business, what kind of business do you have?
That's not relevant, because it's not. Because my point is, if minimum wage is such a critical
So
thing,
you don't have a small business, because I think most people who actually own small businesses understand this.
Okay. Again, then why wouldn't you set minimum wage for $30 an hour?
Because that would be stupid.
Why? Why is there a limit to the point of it?
You set the minimum wage at the minimum level of money that is necessary to have a relatively decent, stress-free life in America. And by stress-free, I'm not talking about sitting around, eating peeled grapes. You know what I'm talking about. You can't.
No, I don't, because I don't know how you can think like that. You can't. So what is a happy medium? We already have poverty lines and all this.
1968, the minimum wage was $10.10. It was $10.17 an hour. It worked just
loaf of bread
fine.
Was 8 cents.
Pardon?
It's not comparative. Comparative wage, comparative cost. If they kept up with each other, Tom, I agree with you. It would be somewhere around the $22 to $23 an hour mark. I absolutely agree with that. But the reality is, it goes back to, again, cause and effect. Because our government chooses not to enforce certain tariffs and other restrictions that we have because we want to be nice and be global, there are ramifications.
No, it's not got nothing to do with being nice and being global. It has to do with transnational corporations buying off our politicians, which takes us back to my Supreme Court rant. But that's
my point there. You want to take money out of politics, and again, let's use the Koch brothers as boogeymen. That's fine, but how much money did Obama spend to get reelected?
My point. It shouldn't have to be. It shouldn't be. But that has nothing to do with the minimum wage either. Are you changing the subject because you want to,
No, minimum wage should be set by supply and demand. That's always worked to an extent.
No, it's never worked. No, Greg, when minimum wage is set by supply and demand, what you get is the world that Charles Dickens wrote about. You get a very, very large working poor class, literally more than 90% of all people living right on, hanging on by their fingernails. You get and all the things that go along with that, crime and sexually transmitted diseases and child prostitution and everything else. That's what you get that. And then you get a very small middle class, which is people like you and me who own businesses, and then and the professional class, and you get a very small ruling elite. And that's it.
I agree with the ruling elite, but without us poor that can't purchase it, what could you possibly sell somebody if you're encouraging people to be homeless?
I think you're making my argument. When you increase the minimum wage, what you do is you inject money into the bottom of the system. Those people have more money to spend. They spend it. And when they spend it, they stimulate the economy. More people show up in your business and buy more of your products.
If you give somebody a quarter and something costs a quarter more, all you're doing is moving money around. That's all you're doing.
No, this is simple macroeconomics. The economies are rarely static. In a feudal society, yes, an economy is static unless you get the Black Plague. But basically, you had 800 years of static, stable economies in Europe, with the exception of the 1300s when the plague hit. But typically, economies, in democracies, economies are not static. Economies, and capitalism has ups and downs and all this sort of stuff. And the economy is not static. And so the question is, actually, I'm going off on a tangent. The question is, if somebody is going to do business in America, what are the rules to do business? Just like if somebody's going to play football, what are the rules for football, right? And so,
locally, you have those.
Is it fair in football that you could put your elbow into somebody's kidney? No. So is it fair in business that you can pay somebody so little money that in order for them to, even if they're working a 40-hour or 50-hour week, in order for them to survive, they have to go to the taxpayers to get food and shelter? That makes no sense. That's a predatory, parasitic business model.
Our educational system in this country has failed dismally.
You're changing the subject.
But that's where it starts at.
No, it's not where it starts at.
Fix it.
I mean, yes, Reagan put Bill Bennett in charge of the education department. It was the first time in history that the education department had been led by a guy who was hostile to education. Our schools have been disintegrating ever since the beginning of the Reagan Revolution. Yes, but that has nothing to do with the minimum wage. You've got people with PhDs and master's degrees out there who are working in Starbucks. In fact, I know one of them. And you've got people working, and it's got nothing to do with education. Greg, thank you for the call. We're out of time here. But you're just, if you want to win a minimum wage argument, hang on just a second. I'll tell you how to do it.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Minimum wage has been with us since 1936. You want to win a minimum wage argument? Name 1 year when the minimum wage went up and unemployment went up.